And so everybody, welcome Denise Nichols. Everybody knows you. I don't even know why I even have to introduce you because you're the most famous person in the Gulf War family.
Oh, I don't think so. There's
Yeah,
others.
you have done a,
Others like Jim Brown. We all started, as soon as we got home. And Jim, I was delighted whenever Jim showed up with all of his notebooks before he got everything scanned and Facebook and having it out there because I was always grabbing his notebooks and sitting down, ignoring everybody and trying to focus because he was one. And I want to remember Paul Lyons, who did it for the 101st.
yeah.
Uh, Paul, we saved him one time. 15 years later, we tried. We lost him, but he was the one doing all the freedom of information for 101st.
Yeah.
So uh, I guess we need to follow up and see if Jim got those documents. If he didn't, I'll see what I can do to get them and get them to Jim so he can do all the professional scanning to get them out to everybody. uh, because I don't do all that mass amount.
Right. Well, let's go ahead and let's talk to the guys about the research.
Yeah, there's been questions every time, I put out about a research item. Let's just talk about the one at Georgetown right now.
Okay.
Uh, Dr. Veronic and a lot of our researchers, and I want to say that a lot of our majority that we have are not VA funded. Okay, the VA was only funding their own researchers within the VA, intramural. When we got our VA RAC committee going and we would see what they were funding, and a majority of it was stress and PTSD and yoga and acupuncture. I I went to a meeting on the health consequences of the Persian Gulf War, and it was right. It was before Rockefeller had the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee with his report. It was before Regal's report, but we'd already started with the VA House Committee, trying to get them to listen to us. So that's the time period. And my feeling as a nurse and having served during Vietnam era and then Desert Storm. Yep, I put in my 20 years. You can date me. I'm older than the rest of you. Sorry about that. But anyway, I'm sorry about it. I wish I was younger still. um, but anyway, and knowing, listen, I had my big brother was Vietnam, Tet 68. The middle brother was kept out of Vietnam by the oldest one for namesake reason. Well, he ended up joining the Marine. I won't go. I will. He was a football player, written up in Texas Football Monthly for high school defensive end. So he was a football player, and football players always have girls around them. So I think he was dating the sheriff, and the sheriff said, I could get you in trouble, but I'll let you join the military instead. So he joined the Marines. So my brother, my middle brother, was Marines, winning to Camp Lejeune. He was the first one of the three of us that has died. Okay, got a cancer and it went fast. And it was during the time of all the contamination at Camp Lejeune. And I met the guys that worked the bill, and it's named after one of their children that died. Okay, and I can't remember his child's name, but the bill and the law that got Camp Lejeune out there, that was the ones that there was two of them that worked together, went throughout the country meeting with Marines, and they were the ones that got the documentary done of Simplify. And I saw that at a film festival, and I thought I was going to have to leave the room. I started crying. Uh, and so it hits home.
Yeah.
But anyway, the other brother, full military career, and then went to defense contracting with our missile defense program with a 360 degree on the AWOCS before we went to Desert Storm. Anyway, he got a cancer, worked with an oncologist in Alabama, had an oncology center there. And a lot of the veterans go into defense contracting or other fields. We know where they go.
Right.
And so it was a real center there with Lockheed and all. So it's a good oncology center. And neither of them ever got any help from the VA guys. Okay. And I want to tell you the old ship that we need to sink, abandon, new modus operandi, mode of operation needs to be started with us going forward, and we've tried. Now, what they normally did was you wait, you may have all these weird symptoms, and no one can track it down until you definitely develop a cancer, or you have a heart attack, or you have a stroke, and you have a definite diagnosis then. I'm going to try to take my nursing brain that has a master's degree and bachelor's and into research. I'm going to try to dumb it down because everybody's always telling me, dumb it down, and I'm trying. So you can have symptoms of fatigue and all these other things that we started with, okay? Fatigue, rashes, pain, and until you develop a diagnosis, being a cancer, being a heart situation, that's the old way. And once you have your tracking on people in the military by age and sex, and then you compare it with a normal population, okay? And once we are above the level that you would see in a normal population, is when they will add a presumptive. The National Institute of Medicine becomes involved with, I think we've got 12 volumes, so I've got 4 now. And I think 1 or 2 on burn pits now. But anyway, they get involved to be the independent type people that research. And they'll pull all the research papers, and for 18 months, they study all this. And they may have some guest speakers or whatever. The first 1 or 2 meetings is a public meeting. We've been there. Many of us have been there, or at least a few. Maybe I could count it in maybe 1, 2 hands. Because it gets old going to DC and going through the rat mazes, okay, as I call them. And they will have 18 months put together a report. The last meeting is public, but what they do is they've already got their press release, they've already released a report, and it's mainly here it is. Too bad if you don't like it type thing. Then, in those studies, they take a environmental or exposure, and they look at the quality of what they're finding in research, and they'll use like I think it's 6 levels of if it should be considered for being connected. Now, that gives the VA a little bit of backup. And I'll tell you what happened with the Vietnam vets when they wanted to give them cardiovascular problems or even diabetes, I think. But they got pushback from the Hill, from Congress, because these vets were older at that time when they brought those up. And so the Congress was saying, well, they're older anyway. They'd have that anyway. But the research was backing up the VA that the independent people did. So that's the old statistics of diagnoses and compare them, okay? Well, we have biomedical that's much more advanced now. I trained in Houston Medical Center, and with Cooley and DeBakey and MD Anderson, and some really marvelous places. It's a mecca of the country. It's not just one hospital like Mayo or Rochester or any of the others. They're branched out now, but they were one main hospital you had to travel to. We had everything down at the Houston Medical Center. We had the space program going on. Right. So there was a lot of development. Biomedical was booming, and it still is. And let me explain to you, if we do animal research, if we had animal research on all this, we could have quickly moved faster. And you get biomarkers from blood or sputum or spinal fluid, whatever. And if you had an animal model like they're doing at Roskamp, they have the whole thing, okay, in Sarasota, Florida, Roskamp Medical Research Institute. And then you bring the vets in and do a consent form. You do a neurocognitive test, a little survey, you get their blood, and you compare it. Well, they had the animals, and I was following them early on, and they showed a biomarker. Well, then they got the vets in, and I'm always pulling vets to get involved in the research. That's where you're going to get some advanced education and knowledge. And yeah, it's a pain in the butt to go to them. It costs you out of your pocket sometimes. We're working on that. But you get there and you're going to be with the researchers. You can talk to them, you can learn from them, you really find out what's really going on. Okay. And you are more aware of what's happening in your body. But what we had was VA internally was doing research, PTSD, stress, yoga, acupuncture, but nothing to, as I said at that first meeting I went to when we had public comment, I said, we can do better. We can find the physiological damage of these exposures if we go about it the way you do on biomarkers and all that. And that's the clue here. We may have symptoms, but we have no known diagnosis. Chronic fatigue syndrome is kind of a rule out syndrome. There's not a test for it, there's not a diagnostic test. Fibromyalgia, there's been one test, but it hasn't been accepted wide scale yet, and it's still out there, but it's not counting for anything. Okay, it won't help you any at this point. But fibromyalgia was just definitely, the points of pain that you have in your body. Okay, so to get those diagnoses, if you have these symptoms, get the symptoms and get the VA provider to put those symptoms in the chart. I'm always in fatigue. Take your little diary, keep a diary, put it on your calendar, do something that you can print off and say, look at this, and this is where I ranked it as far as 1 to 10, your bowel problems are still lumped over functional GI problems, okay? And under that is irritable bowel syndrome, either constipation or diarrhea or a mix of both. Your GERD symptoms are under there, but it's under functional GI. Then you have this other level of symptoms that you kind of lump together. That's harder to get, okay? So I concentrate and tell people, concentrate on those top 3, because chronic fatigue, based on how it's affecting your life, all the way to bedridden, goes to 100%. Your fibromyalgia will go up to 40%. Your irritable bowel, again, is based on how much it's affecting you. There's definitions on the va.gov page. You can find the DBQs now. You can find the how they break down the percentages for each of those. You can get better educated so you know what's going on. Everything's on that va.gov. I tell you, that's the Bible. Okay,
that's right. It's true.
That's true. And everybody's got to go in there and learn, where do you find out about eligibility? Where do you find priority group? How do you find out about the war-related illness centers, which are 3 of them, Palo Alto, DC, and Orange, New Jersey? How do you find out that there's a VA RAC committee for Gulf War illness research, which I'm sorry to say, I'm not happy with what's happened. And a lot of us that were in there, I worked on these bills. I walked those long halls, marble floored halls in DC. I left my family, my 4-year-old, when we came home. Mr. Dad became Mr. Mom when I'd do my thing, and he had to do his thing. He was still working. He was still being a reserve pilot and all that. Okay, so we juggled a lot of factors, much less any other family stuff. But I worked to get co-sponsors on our bills. Both of them, I weren't happy with what we ended up, but you have to start somewhere, okay? And knowing what we had before, it's always been in my mind that we could do better, but we had to find people outside, independent, with medical universities, medical institutes that had some knowledge that would jump in and help us. We found them along the way before we ever found a way to get them funded. Okay. And I can tell more if you bring me on another time. I can tell you some backgrounds of the researchers. They all knew something was wrong with us when we came home.
Right.
By different ways. So they knew, and they were connected, various ways somewhat to VA, but not full time. Okay. But they had studied a lot of them. We had one that worked on AIDS research. People, you go back and read about AIDS on the I think it's not Band of Brothers. The Band Played On is a book about AIDS activism. And it took years to get them to identify that huge problem. And one of our researchers, multiple areas and degrees, worked on some of that. When that kind of got solved, move on. Okay, take the next mystery. Well, in the late 70s, early 80s, chronic fatigue syndrome, from whatever reason, they're still working on that. And so we picked up a lot of the researchers out in the civilian world that work chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, trying to help them. Those people have had to even work and try to raise funds from their beds, people. You think we got it bad? They had no source to even, I connected with them early when I came home, okay? So that they had similar issues, and I'm thinking, okay, I've heard about this, let me connect with them. Well, they didn't have an agency to go to. They finally have Health and Human Services. They got an advisory committee way after us. Well, their advisory committee had the internet. I mean, the internet video. You could hear them. It wasn't just the call in that we had. We didn't have the computer set up that you'd see the slides and see them talking and all that. So they got something better than we did. But it's kind of like we keep up with each other because it follows along. So anyway, we had to get some funding source because we weren't happy. Those of us, we weren't happy with the direction the VA RAC committee went. I want you to know that there was a mission statement. We knew it was coming, guys. There was a mission statement. They changed the mission statement. There was a strategic plan. They played with that. Then we started losing our people on the committee because they had been fed up. One of our nurses had been on the president's advisory committee. I held on to her all through that. I held on to her as long as I could through the VA RAC. And she finally said, it's not worth it. I'm not doing this anymore. And I kept her on for a little while longer, but she eventually quit. And we lost a few that way because we were, especially as veterans, we were so frustrated. And in fact, we did a walkout from the VA RAC committee and protested. And there's some pictures of us holding posters in front of the VA. And then we left and went to the Hill. Every time we were up there, well, it's not just go to one meeting. It was go to the Hill, coordinate more, try to tell them what's going on, keep the effort going. Another hearing, VA committee would deal with claims or healthcare or cemetery. That's their division, disability, healthcare, cemetery, memorial. And so we could get a subcommittee involved. Then we had Shay's committee that came in after all of that. And they had 3 years of hearings on the Gulf War illness issue and 2 years or vice versa on the anthrax. So yeah, we've had a long path. We've done what we could. We went back to the Hill and we said, we've got to find other research funds. We found out that there was a program that started in 93, which wasn't well known, but it was a congressionally directed medical research program. A senator's wife and got involved with cancer and veterans. And that was the first one. It's built from there, about 39 programs or so. I haven't counted lately, but everything from parasitic diseases to just you name it. But it's a way that we can get independent civilian medical universities and medical researchers involved. Now, they go through this thing. I'm going through as quickly as I can, Kevin.
I know.
They go through, and for them to be accepted, there's a letter of intent that starts the process with a researcher that may feel like they can help and they have resources that they can dedicate to it, be it a medical university, be it at Roscamp Medical Research, be it whatever. So they put in, and there's kind of a letter of intent that kind of weeds out anything that like PTSD, stress. We've got enough of that research that goes on at the VA. We direct them that way. And so we try to concentrate, and there's a landscape If you want that, I can send it, and it's all out there on the internet, people, that tells you what we've done overall. There's a pamphlet that goes through it, and then there's looking toward the future, the strategic plan. So they have to meet a panel that goes through, just reviews their proposal, which can be 300 pages, more or less. Okay. In that, they include the budget, they include everybody that's going to, how many personnel, the equipment they need, whatever. Okay. And plus their personnel, if they're part-time with the project, and full, part-time with the university, and part-time, that's all divided up as far as their salary, their insurance, all. It is a detailed budget proposal in there. Okay. And no, we've tried to get the word out. You got to put funding in there for travel, but we have a choice to make. Do we want to use everything we can possibly do to stretch the money to get more answers in all the areas that we need to look at? Okay. The decision factor. Okay. But anyway, they go through a peer review. I did it the first time. There was 15 people, 3 vets, and the others were all PhD scientists, that kind of thing. And so we had to do our work before we came, and it was a day and a half, 2 days that we had to go in person. But we read all that proposal, and we had 33, I think, at that time. So it was 11 for each of us vets. So we had to run through that, think about it, how it relates, all that. Okay, there's background of if they're neurological or what they're looking at as far as a medical system. Through that, we all, at the end, after we go around, we present 2 people primarily, one PhD, one that would, do the main presentation, and then questions and, answers. And then we rate it, just based on its own value. Okay. At that point, we have all the members rate. And so there's a ranking scale at the end. So we know which ones were ranked really high. The next step is the integrative panel. And I haven't been on that, but I've read about it. But basically, they're trying to balance everything. Okay. They know what they've done in the past, where they're going in the future, where they've got funded work already going on, because some of these it could be a 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year, depending on what they're doing. There's also different awards for new researchers or junior researchers, different award schedules too. So they keep all that in mind at the integrative panel. Okay, they go through all that, guys, and then they're rated and they get awarded. They know they've gotten to that far. Okay, well then it's a whole nother process, because the Army money is where we're getting this from, DoD approach. That is why I'm hollering at y'all every year at the beginning of Congress that we get our leads on the House side, and we hope to have a Democrat and a Republican. They send out an electronic letter to all 435. It's kind of like, this is what's new. We need y'all's support, So then after that's out, we can start calling, emailing, going up there on the Hill, visiting with them, except during COVID, which really messed us up. And so we get them to sign on. This letter then goes, it's a sign on, not a co-sponsor, like a bill would be. Then this letter, they're hitting a deadline with the DoD Approach Committee on the House side. So we have to get it in by their deadline. So we get that in. It's overlapping. The Senate has to do the same thing with the Senate Approach Committee, okay? So right. It can be overlapping, but it's very time oriented. That's when we need everybody's help from every state, okay? We need you attacking first your House of Reps. And your rep is very important, but other reps in your state, if you're in a big state, we need all the help we can get. So we count on y'all making phone calls from home. If you want to come with us and learn, you're welcome. We'll tell you when we're going to be there. You can come join the fun.
Well, and the good thing about that is when it's time for that stuff to go on, you let me know. I will go on the air every freaking night, and I'll be
Well, we
like,
started out, I got us up on the house side, there's 435. And I kept going, we can get 100. We can get 100 every year. That was my goal. We finally got up to 109.
it's the
Well,
Senate
then
side.
no, that's the House side.
Oh,
435 members of the House. And we had slowly built it up. And like I left it, I know some people know Anthony, okay? And I left it up to Anthony to pick up the ones that already been signed on. I'm over there shaking the trees some more and finding some new people that I hadn't talked to that I'd worked on and they hadn't signed on the year before. But we hit 109 with election losses, with retirement, with death. We went down to like, oh gosh, what was it? 109 to 89. I think we lost 12 or something like that, 12, 16. And I'm going, oh, we got to make that up. We can't go up there because it's COVID, and there are restrictions on people coming in. And plus, we didn't want to be around and get infected ourselves. So that created problems. And we ended up with this past year was 80, I think. Okay, really disappointing. Senate side's been pretty stable. We have only one lead over there. We've tried to get another lead, but we have Senator Baldwin that's been with us all the get-go. So we usually have 100 senators, and we got a 20 sign on roughly every year. But you have to keep in mind that there's other CDMRP, congressionally directed medical research programs under this umbrella. Okay. So they're all competing at the same time. And some of them feel like I can only sign on to one. I don't think there's any rules. I think they just feel that way. And then there are certain committees that I have found out by going and being up there and talking to them and their staff that if they're on the Armed Services Committee, they have been told, one person told me they've been told they couldn't sign on to our sign-on letters. Whatever. Or if they're on the Approach Committee, you're not going to bother anybody on the Approach Committee. They're the ones that get the letter, of support. So we narrowed down how many we can really impact. So phone calls, emails, get on their website if you're a constituent. I find them on Facebook. You can find them on Twitter, whatever you can do long distance. And, we'll hopefully be able to get back up there and work. But we haven't for the last, since COVID started. So it's hurt us. I won't go further on that. But let me point out some things. I've already told you, these people get this funding from Defense Approach, but it's independent. They didn't have to go through contracting, okay, which is a whole nother gobbledygook. But then they also have their medical research institute they're at, whether it's a university, a medical university hospital, be it Roscamp, they have their own institutional review board. And there's a lot of standards and protocols throughout all this. I won't go into all that. Okay, researchers have to know that, but all of us don't have to know all of that. I'm trying to give you a brief run through.
right.
But that means when we ask for you to get involved, I know when I start because I talk to all these researchers. Listen, if I'm working to get us some money to get outside researchers that I believe in, that I've met and I've seen their quality by reading past research that they put out, all the gobbledygook, as people call it, that are not into the medical sciences and all. But you cannot just say, well, why can't I get a lab person, draw my blood and ship it to them? Well, that don't work. Okay, number one, it may be fresh blood that they get and take right into a lab. Okay, may not be a preservative in it. It may be for research testing, okay, which may be something that a normal lab would never have the facility to do. Besides that, they are budgeted and covered for the cost of that. Besides that, legally, if they're doing the research, they have to control the samples, the data, the storage of leftover samples, all of that. Let that sink in. I'm going to take a breath, take a little swallow of water. Kevin, are you following me? Do you have any questions on what I've covered so far?
No, 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 no. This is no. I'm letting you take the floor. You got this
keep
going on.
keep the roll going, huh?
That's right.
So when I put it out, guys, you have no knowledge. I have been in Facebook hell,
Yes, you
Facebook
have.
jail, because I go and find every page I possibly can, veteran related. I start with the Gulf War related, the key ones like Gulf War illnesses that David Winnett started, Get Marine. We have Gulf War illness, that's kind of a community page, and we don't have a lot of discussion there. We're just kind of an alert system, a news, breaking news.
Right.
Okay. The Gulf War illness, we've got Desert Storm all the way forward. David does not discriminate by period. Then we have Gulf War illness for Desert Storm. Okay, so we try to concentrate because a lot of our research we have to be geared in because the exposures are going to be different in every time period. You understand, people? The newer vets didn't get PV tablets. The newer vets didn't take anthrax. The newer vets have different uniforms and they're not permeated with the promethean, which is supposed to be a safe thing. I have a story about that, but anyway, their exposure is different from the DU exposure we had. Okay, the exposures from the bunker explosions and things that happen in Jabal with chemical agents is different than what they're having. So it has to be by each time period, each location. We can't throw it all together. Yes, we had some burn pits, but nothing like what 9/11 did. Nothing like those suckers that they had burn pits that were like, shoot, they didn't have incinerators. So you burn everything. It wasn't just the excrement from your own body and your group that was with you, okay? It wasn't stirring the pot and burning it, okay? These were huge burn pits. They knew it was a problem as it was going on. That's what's sickening. But anyway, so that's different. So each era is each time period, each operation is different. So you can't lump us all in without dividing that out. And I want to bring up children here. Y'all talked about
Yes.
children today. I'm going to bring that up. There's an association of birth defect children. Google that. They have been involved. They got started way before. Oh gosh, I think they were out there with Vietnam even before. But they have a lot of resources on their page. There's a lot of children of the Vietnam pages out there. There's just a whole lot of pages of different effects to children by your war. And Vietnam, the only thing that ever got covered with Vietnam was spina bifida. We know there was more because those that were endemic children in Vietnam had all kinds of birth defects. So there's birth defects, and then there's the hidden genetic damage. Okay. Now, there hasn't been a lot of genetic studies. I mean, the Million Man program started, I don't know how many years ago. And what's important here, and the one thing I want to bring out, how many of us had military parents or were military brats? Okay. Think about that, guys. You were on military bases. A lot of them are now declared chemically contaminated, not just Camp Lejeune. Okay. There are a lot of chemically contaminated bases, much less other sites around our country and overseas that were contaminated. Okay. One way or the other. Now, if you grew up on a base with your parents being father, veteran, or whatever, you need to write down what I'm telling you is write your exposures down. Each of you that are vets, write your exposures. Which bases were you at before you went to war? Okay. And later, if you came back and served and didn't get out for a while, you want to talk about where you grew up. And is it an agricultural area where they were spraying the crops? Were there other exposures like is happening in Florida, the red tide? Were you up by Salt Lake City in Utah where they had testing, nuclear testing? or the other sites they had nuclear testing. All that's in your genetic background and your environmental history. You need to write all that down because that will impact you. And what needs to be done is connecting with, and some of this can be done within, there's a Go for Babies Facebook page, and
Yes.
they're doing a lot of work, and I've tried to feed into them, okay? But you need to contact and look at your main children research centers. Okay, Philadelphia Children's Hospital is unknown. Look up the ones that are outstanding children's hospitals. There's award systems for hospitals and medical universities now. Get to know those because that's where you want to go with your children, civilian wise. Um, fund me sites, fund me pages. There's other resources that those families can tap into to try to get answers for their kids. There was nothing ever done children wise. The Million Man is looking at the veterans, and right now they're saying, "Oh, we don't have enough female veterans." So they're trying to recruit more female veterans into giving their blood and getting involved with that. I think it's all going to come down to genetics with the kids. Some of these are hard to diagnose, and my heart goes out to you. I came back, my kiddo was 4. She played in stuff I sent back ahead of me, and she had some weird things happen too. I won't go into that this time around, but it happens in many ways. It can be your equipment that came back, and I was yelling and screaming, people, get it out of your house. Don't put it under the bed or the crib if you have limited storage in a base housing, which that did happen. You want it out of the house. Put it in a steel can with a lid on it. It's contaminated. We didn't do too well with bringing back tonnage. In fact, Germany, if you landed there, they didn't want any equipment coming off of the plane if you were just a stopover, because they knew. So that's something you brought up earlier in the earlier
Yeah. I'm glad you touched.
conversation.
I'm so glad you touched base on that.
So anyway, I want to go to my checklist here. Our research is with the civilians. We've had to fight every year, and we compete against the other programs in the CDMRP. We were lucky because we had Sanders and Representative Kuchinik that had been on Representative Shea's subcommittee on government reform and oversight. And they were some of our fiercest people helping us along the way. Not just 2 of them, but a few of them that I can reference right now.
Right.
So we have to get that funding every year. It's really for our civilian researchers, and most of them that we have been connected with civilian chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. Okay, and so they've done work there. And like Veronica at Georgetown, like Dr. Younger down in Alabama, I think almost all of them. Dr. Klimas down in Florida, Dr. Sullivan mainly met Gulf War Vets, has her cohort out of Fort Devens, Massachusetts, that got her started. She was doing C&P exams and realizing something's wrong with him. So that caught their little curiosity. And doctors do have, not all doctors, but some that get into research, they want to solve problems. And when you find doctors that are really open to you, maybe somebody in their family, maybe a vet, it may be somebody else, that they did different things. Your typical medical school does not teach about Gulf War illness, people.
Nope.
There is no internship or residency on Gulf War illness. They barely know, if they go looking, chronic fatigue or fibro. They may have heard about it, but they don't know a lot. They have not looked at the research from the civilian world on that. Okay. So, yeah, you got to find a way to connect with your provider. Okay. I bring in a sheet. I got mad. I left the ZA. I came back because I wanted to get a referral for the War Related Illness Center, because I told all the other vets when we got that going, to go get a referral. I met all these people up in DC. Go get your referral. Get your VA provider, make a. Well, that's why I came back because I was getting feedback, and I said, "Oh God, let the nurse go through it again." So I went back into the system at that point after getting mad. I had a female hematologist, and that's a whole nother story. But I would try so hard to get them to listen to us, and I know that they had a big VA meeting, and they were basically told, you don't need to do this, and they almost had a revolt. And it was early on out in California, a big meeting with VA people. I heard about it from a social worker that was in my DAV. He came back from the meeting telling me the scuttlebutt. So anyway, the providers are not trained. Okay, the only training that's been out there was the Orange, New Jersey, not Orange, excuse me, Palo Alto took on the job to be the educators for the darks, and so they would have webinars. Okay, that were through they could turn on the TV at VA with the internal VA TV system. Okay, and they could have webinars. And they had scheduled dates and all. And I mean, I would run around with VA Denver going, "Do you know about the webinar?" And I'm trying to spread the word. Here's how you get on, and here's the link. It's all on the VA website, okay? And I tell them about that. And then they also brought people out to train on site at Palo Alto. And mainly, what I've found out is the state coordinators that they have in every state, that if you go to the registries, connect with a state coordinator. They're the ones taking care of the registries, but they're also the ones that got some training, okay? Your normal provider has not had that, people. Don't attack them for something they don't know. Make friends with them. Bring in a sheet, print out the links that you think would be good for them to look at, and just hand it to them. Go, this might help you. If you need more goodies, I have some stacks of stuff. I could put a little care package to you if you'll use it to, lay it on somebody's desk at the VA, your provider, so it gets more use that way. You can look through it, make a copy yourself, or make notes, whatever. But get it to the provider so they have it sitting there going, "Oh, maybe I'll look at that," and get a little self-education going.
Right.
So that's been the provider problem. There's at least two of us, myself, that have been around since the get-go, an Army nurse, okay, that I kept thinking she could be my replacement. Well, she doesn't want to be my replacement. But anyway, we both have been pushing pretty solidly, two nurses pushing about education, provider education, over and over. And we look at the bills and maybe has one sentence. And it's just, and they're not saying what they're going to do or, anything. It's just kind of thrown out there without a whole lot of basis. So that is a problem. And I will acknowledge to you guys, okay? I've been through it too. I left the VA, went civilian. That was a whole lot of fun. I ended up with a Vietnam vet doctor, and I brought up DU, and he goes, "What's that?" So, hey, they're used to the normal, I call it the cookbook medicine, okay?
Right.
You go through and see what's there with your diagnosis and your test results, and they're trained based on, their specialty and all that.
Right.
So that's one thing. Um, so a lot of people are not, cannot relate to what a researcher has to go through and why we need to go to them. Because also, if they're doing brain scans, some of these brain scans aren't in every hospital out there, okay? They are specialized brain scans, and if they do have them, it's usually because somebody's doing a research. Because like a fMRI and then diffusion tensor technology is added on there, you have to be in the tube and doing something to activate your brain, like the TubeX test. I hate that thing. But you're in the tube longer, it's more costly. It is more of a research-based test. Mainly your brain scans are looking for aneurysm, arterial venous malformations, tumors, okay? When you get into looking and trying to find what's there that no one's ever studied before, like has been done with chronic fatigue syndrome and now us. And Veronica is a leader in this because with the fMRI DT and the team he has uh, that are, they're getting training too, guys, but they kept looking at these and going, there's something there. And they finally found it. And then they're comparing it with his previous work with chronic fatigue syndrome with brain scans. He's done that. Um, Dr. Younger, who's now at Alabama, Birmingham, is doing it with a different scanner. So, the brain scans are quite expensive instruments, but a lot of it's research to zero in on where the damage is. And then the one that excites me is the one in Dr. Younger's doing, because my first question to him before I got really excited was, is this the brain scan machine that a lot of our VA hospitals and civilian hospitals would have? Yes, not just research based. And I went, oh, we may have found a place to finally get diagnostic testing by brain scan. Okay. So these are very specialized places, is what I'm saying. Our hypercoagulation studies were done with research based testing of the blood. And it's not a test that they would do at any lab. Okay. Now, some of our researchers are on clinical trials, including Nova, with the studies that are coming out of her team that's at the Miami VA, and one over at Dr. Gulam at University of California, San Diego. They thought about an advance. They saw COVID had coming at us. They put it into their study protocol beforehand, which meant budgeting. So out in San Diego, they have one that they're running, the mitochondrial cocktail, that you do not have to go to them. Okay, on their muscle biopsy, skin biopsy, we had to go out there. They did it with their facility. But with this, they have contracted for Quest Labs, wherever the vet is, to get the sample. And I think it's probably sent on from there. But it's custody of evidence, okay? Just like in a murder case. You got all those bags that are labeled and it's got to be tracked and logged in. Same thing. Any leftover specimens have to be maintained. So they have a lab person maintaining it and paying for space in a lab, facility to keep it at the temperature and all. So that's why you cannot just complain about, I got to go there. Yes, you have to go there. And I cannot go through this on 100 of pages that I've got, that I put info out on Facebook. Okay. So I'm trying to get it out there so everybody hears me. You have to go to the facility the majority of the time.
Right. I agree with that.
The
I
other
agree with that
one was Dr.
100%.
Klimas with her treatment trial. They're doing a long distance lab stuff, okay? But it all has to be figured in their initial budget, their initial proposal, and all the steps the researcher has to go through, okay? So those are unique situations that have occurred that aren't normally out there, okay? I want to emphasize, people, please do not be negative. Please be positive, because this has never been done for veterans before. Not for Vietnam vets, not for Korea vets, not for World War II or World War One. Okay, uh, what we've gotten into is independent civilian medical research to tie in with us, and these people were already out there, and they found us, we found them. Okay, and they care. They care so deeply, and I can't tell you how valuable it is to be able to go and do the study and be there to talk to them and look at their facility. Okay, I love Ross Camp. They got the animal lab. They got 4 or 5 labs. And there's doctors' buildings off to the side that they were expert and started out with Alzheimer's and brain damage with the football players and all, called CTE now. Then they go further with the brain damage, and of course our brains are involved. So this is something never done before. We're breaking the old battleship, going to sink it. And we're setting a standard, people, and we should all be in this equally.
I
I
agree.
am also a Desert Storm vet, just because I had different experiences, different observation skills, and we all get together and we all share like we're doing over Kevin's taping, and I need to catch up with all the people he's interviewed. But I've done the same thing. Been around 30 years now, and we've met at meetings at Memorial Parade for the Desert Storm Memorial. In fact, I worked to get more co-sponsors. It was going on at the same time. I'm not happy with the new design, but that's another thing.
Right. But anyway, we all need to be more involved.
It is independent, okay? Independent. And that is a benefit. I want you to know there's other ways. If you're strapped and cannot finance it with what they can provide you, they provide you kind of an honorarium for your time that you're spending there. Some of them do have travel funds, but it has to be arranged in advance, okay, of how much. So you need to cost out whether you're going to go by plane, train, bus, or you're going to drive, okay? And if you need a hotel room, all those costs. And you want to go in low budget so that your other veterans can compete too. Now, what you do here is you write all that up, get about the research, and you get a letter from the researcher's email due and print it out that you're involved, and this is when you're supposed to go, and this is your cost factor. You go to the veterans organizations in your locale, okay? Your post, your chapters, be it VFW, be it Legion, be it DAV, be it Marine Corps League, whatever you got in the area. And you get to them and get it to the right people before their monthly meeting. And I include the Masonic lodges that are all through the country. They have a lot of vets involved. They'll pass the hat at their meeting to meet the need. But they will help. You just got to give them a chance, okay? If they have the funds, they will help. So you got to do it that way. If it comes down rock bottom, get in touch with me. I can come up with more ideas. Or one time, the Army nurse and I combined forces, and I paid for the gas for somebody. And I found the hotel discounted rate, called on her, you want to help? And so together we covered the cost for the guy and got him there. Okay. Well, all of us can do more. We can have funny sites, get that word out. We can do more working together by our units, having our unit pages saying, hey, we got this study going as a unit member that wants to participate. And your unit members may contribute themselves to each other. Okay. That's one of the things. If your unit, if your military branch doesn't have a page for Desert Storm, Gulf War Illness branch, set one up.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
If your unit doesn't have one, start it up. You can do a survey with your unit. Find out if somebody's passed, what age did they pass at? Do you know the cause of death? Was it a heart attack, a stroke? What was it? A cancer? We need that data because the VA is only keeping data that we see on their 5-10-year mortality morbidity reports. And I'd like to have it by unit. I think y'all should too, because your unit would have different exposures and what your job was, okay? But we don't get that data. I mean, in the past, I was collecting all that and doing a write-up every month of how many had died. And if I knew anything, okay, that got emotionally draining. I had to back away from that. But I'd even call the funeral home and try to pass a message to the family and try to get whatever I could as far as data on age that they died and if they knew the unit, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of work to be done that if we divide it and get all of us involved, oh my, we could be a force to be dealt with again.
And that's what I think you need to focus on next time. I think.
Yeah, I think we've gone over time. I know. There's one thing I want to mention from the talk that you had today.
Okay.
I put the link out on your comments. He has MS. Now, the MS group that took care of our early MS was the Paralyzed Veterans of America, did a real good job organizing our MS vets together. In fact, they'd go up to the hill together. They had a bus, and I saw them getting off the bus and going, oh, y'all are here. So that's something. There's a Parkinson's links that I put up because y'all mentioned Parkinson's. So I quickly went off the line and got the links and put them up on your comments under.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, so that's there. There are specialized centers with the VA for Parkinson's. I mean, those two links will look at it. pass that around, okay? When I put out something, please help spread the news. That's what we can do. Is we don't have a good C3I. Yeah, I'm not the typical nurse.
Right,
I know.
and you're allowed to go on now to onto the Facebook page now and start throwing your stuff
Yeah.
onto mine. And so,
But people, if I give a link, copy the link, take it to a page you're on, share it,
share
go
it.
explore that link. There's also a new link. What did I find? Alzheimer's. VA had a new link. I hadn't seen it until about a month ago.
Right.
So there's ideas out there. I'm just scanning my notes. Talked about lab studies. You have to go in person. Quit asking that question. Quit being negative, people. Listen, we're doing something that's never been done before. Okay, and before they waited till you had a cancer, and they collected stats according to how many men, certain age group that had it in civilian life, age and sex match, right? And then when it went over and above what normally was showing up in a normal control group, and then they went to the IOM
Right.
and then they put it into the VA, and then it has to be legislated to have the extra money for the compensation. So you guys, you need to get this all in your head, okay? And I've never been given the chance except when I have people call me. I'll go through it with you and I'll answer your questions. I want to know about you too. But there's advantages to what we're doing, and I want you to see it as something that was never done before. It is a role model. It is a extremely good role model to follow for others to follow us in the future. The children really have nowhere to go. The VA cares for the veterans. They compensate the veterans rarely, like I said, spina bifida. Get on the Association of Birth Defects. The burning semen was a study early on out of Cincinnati. I can dig out that research and throw it out there again. It may take me a little while to catch up on all the
Right.
demands I'm finding that I need to get more info. And I try to meet everybody. I talk to them, find out what their problems is, and I'm going to go through and see what they need, whether it's the rules of the game, of if you should keep trying to put your claim in after you've gotten a certain amount or not. All those things I've learned along the way. I would recommend everybody use their State Department of Veterans Affairs, okay? Because, and I'm going to spell this out to you and y'all can pass it around. The State Department of Veterans Affairs, yes, has county or parish level service officers, but you can always go up to the state level, okay? And they're experts on everything. They're kind of the supervisor, okay? Now, why is that different? Well, it's different than your service organization service officers in one way, in a significant way. There's an economic benefit. The state wants to get their veterans cared for, veterans that have benefits earned the hard way. And so we want to get them covered. So that's an economic advantage for your county, for your city, your town, and your state. Plus, you learn about all the other benefits for your state. You get started there, you're going to, see little brochures and all that. So you find about your other state benefits, and every state is different on their state level differences. Okay, children. There's also the Vietnam vet children are pretty organized too. They've got their Facebook pages. So what happens is the old way was to follow just symptom development until you got a bad diagnosis. And then they had to do the IOM study and the data to say, oh, it's much above civilian population. Gee, we ought to give them help now.
Right.
Okay. That's how it goes, buddy. That's why it's different. And the VA providers, they're not all bad people, but give them some goodies. Okay. Print out, if I send out a study with a link and it applies to you, print out that link on a sheet of paper or print out whatever and just hand it over to them. Go, I was reading this, kind of interesting. It might help us, you and I, to meet what I need to get done and you to help me. Okay. Be it not adversary. Okay, don't be an enemy. You want to form a team with your doctor. Okay, if they're not documenting well, you need to sit down and say, Doc, I know you won't do a DBQ because you're here to provide my care. But what you can do to help all of us vets is put down the symptoms we're complaining about. Put it in our words with parentheses around it, whatever. But get it into your progress note. Okay. You need to get a progress note, any lab results, your diagnostic testing as soon as you can. At every VA hospital, if you're going there, there is an Office of Freedom of Information. You go down and they print out what you need if it's just something from your last visit, or you can put it down and say, it's probably not available to you yet, but can you get it and you send it to my mailing address? They'll do that. It's all there. It's all available to you. And I've had fun talking to you. I know I went over 15 minutes. I don't know how long I talked. How long did I go, Kevin?
An hour. Every time you talk, we always say, oh, it just take but a second. And then about 30, 45 minutes later, we're like, hey, how long we been on the phone?
Yeah.
No, but which is good. This is informative. But this is
I'm trying to think if he covered anything that I could loop back to, and I think I took notes as he was talking.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Oh, there is something. Okay, he brought up Jabal. There was groups that were more exposed, and they had study groups early on. So they may do a Google search and find on the Jabal. Kamasi is pretty well known. But I think there was another incident, and they had those as groups that they were keeping an eye on. And I can't remember the Indiana veteran congressman. Can't remember his name, but he started watching that very closely. He's not up there anymore. I think his name was Evans, Representative Evans, but he's gone now. I think he's even died. He was a Vietnam vet, I think, himself. You need to get a relationship going with your senators and your reps, guys. You really need. Ask them for a town hall meeting for Desert Storm vets. Okay. And as you do something, Kevin, that you're doing great. Okay. And then we have our Max Factor that's doing his gunny program. If they're good, you need to, write them an email and say, this is good. Y'all need to look at this,
Yeah.
And let their staff know. And let me tell you, if you're dealing a personal issue and wanting a personal relationship, you got to go to the home office. But if we're dealing with legislation or funding, that's when we have to talk to and call long distance in D.C. And we outline that of who you should, the defensive probe staff or whatever, it may be. But you need to make friends with that person. You need to make friends with their veterans person in their home office. Ask for a town hall meeting.
Yes. As a matter of fact,
bring it all together. And the other thing that I'm throwing out to everybody is on their issues page, on every rep's page, every senator's page. I've been bugging them. Y'all can help me bug them, okay? But I said, you ought to have your veterans and, say post 9/11 or Desert Storm, and put up the legislation, a link to whatever's currently going on up at the Hill, okay? Bug them to do that. If we have research going on, we need them to let it be known also that it can be found on their website. If they care about that, sure, they can do other things that would show us that they really are in tune. And for sure, find out how their support really is. Okay? Have they signed on the bills as co-sponsors? Have they signed on, despite everybody calling them, have they signed on to the letter of the year that pushes for probes? Okay? Hey, we got up to 109 out of 435. And even though I took off, we take off the approach committee and armed services, that was still, we still should have gotten more. So I don't care what, Democrat or Republican. I care about veterans.
Amen.
And if they're not going to support veterans, well, burn apart under their feet.
That's as a matter of fact,
Don't threaten them.
I'm
Please
writing
don't
that
threaten
down
them.
right now. As a matter of fact.
Don't threaten them. No threats. Be polite, but say, you're not doing enough for us. You're not really hearing us. Why don't you have a town hall meeting? Or can I bring in 4 or 5 of my friends that I know are in the area to your office and we can sit down at your conference table?
Yep.
And you can hear one by one. We don't have the money to travel up there as much as others give out. Some of us have been doing that for years. Let me tell you, we're not paid for this, people. We're not paid the
No,
time we
that's right.
spent.
That's right.
We're not paid for our travel. I find the cheapest hotels I find, and I've spread the word, okay, because I've used so many hotels. There's a little Highlander hotel in Arlington, has a big parking lot so people can drive in and park their cars without having to pay, okay? They don't even have to rent a room, okay? We have it set up. It was a family-owned place. And you were walking distance to Virginia Square Station for the metro that we could metro in. Don't go downtown park because you'll never find your car. And if you get to the parking lot down there, a lot of times they have the keys and they're all locked up.
Right.
You're stuck without your car.
and here's the other thing. If you want to spread the word, like and share this podcast, Go For Illness pages, Go For Illness discussion, the Go For Babies, everything. Like and share it. The only way we get the message out there is by stuff like this.
It's a C3I. Remember that from military people? We have to develop our network better. And that's
right.
Why when Facebook came about, I was bugging everybody. I did an article about it with Veterans Today saying, hey, we can virtually reunite. We had the tools that the Vietnam vets didn't. They had to go buy fax machines and they'd fax each other, have a fax line.
Damn right.
I got a fax machine. And then they had the telephone roster.
Yeah,
well, we had our computers. They were new. And let me tell you, before we didn't have the reports. Desert Storm mom had 2 Marine veterans. She was married to a Vietnam vet. She and I had a hand scanner. I'd scan the daggum report.
Oh my God.
And I have to go back and correct it because the hand scanners weren't very good.
Yeah.
I think she invested and had a better scanner. So if I was up there and she wasn't, I'd get it and I'd fax it to her so she could start working. Those things weren't available online ahead of time.
Right.
We were out doing what Congress should have been doing. They had the money. They had the equipment. We didn't. The written testimony. They'd have a table. I'd grab it, and if she was back home, I'd be faxing it to her so she could get it out. Otherwise, we ended up having to hand type a lot of things to get it out.
Right.
And sharing information. So 30 years later, we have more of the network. We have more ability.
And that's what it's about right there.
And that is pulling us all together. Everybody's doing their share. Kevin, it's beautiful. You're interviewing vets. Max, I think, went a different way.
Right. And I like the way Max is doing it. And it's the way it should be.
And I want to say one more thing. One of the first documentary films that were done, we were up in D.C. and it was vets and their spouses and Victor Sylvester from Texas. I don't think Hoy was up there, our Marine veteran from Vietnam. But we were having, I don't know if it was a Yellow Ribbon Committee or whatever. But Gary Knowles sent his people over to tape, okay? I expected him. Well, we got the person operating the camera, and we had another person, but he had to go. He had to leave. So I ended up being the interviewer off screen that they could edit out the questions. And I was guiding the vet or their spouse of what to cover. Well, let's talk about this, and give them something to talk about. And he took that, he made it in, it was on VHS tape back then. And he sent me 535 VHS tapes.
Wow.
And I take them about 50 at a time up to the hill with a little cart. And so when I was going around, I was presenting one to every office.
Holy cow. That's awesome.
That was a production. But Gary Knowles is kind of a health guru. and he has the Progressive Radio Network. I do a show now. I'm the host for now. I don't know. It's a weekly thing. I've interviewed our researchers to get the information out there from the research coordinators of what they're doing step by step. How much are they able to pay you? How much time is it going to take you where you need to go? What little steps they're doing, while you're there. Okay. So that you get what you would get if you called them. Okay. I get it as an interview. And I've replayed some of them 3 or 4 times. I've had Boston University. I've had Dr. Galone. I've had Dr. Younger in Alabama. Uh, Gee, I haven't gotten Veronic. Oh, I can't believe I haven't grabbed him, but he's been kind of busy. He is one of the busiest people. I don't know when he sleeps. Okay, then I've got to get climb a ship. Okay, and I want the actual coordinator that's taking the phone calls to put people in the study. We all know about Jimmy.
Right.
Jimmy's already interviewed with Max. He's been on the programs that I've been on down at Nova
And with me. Yep.
and with you. And so I want to get the coordinators so that you hear their voice. These are the people you're going to talk to when you call in. And you've already got more info. And then I get the info out about what the study involves. And so y'all can share that too. Okay.
We will.
I've
We
had
will.
I've had a lot of pushback on progressive radio. I don't agree with all their people they have on the air, but we were given this hour of programming timing out of a radio station out of New York, and it's on the internet. They're just now, they just did one with Jerry being videotaped. So they're just moving in that direction,
Yeah.
okay? But listen, you don't have to agree with this station or who else they put on. But am I supposed to give up this hour
No. No, no,
that was
no.
given to us
That's right.
uh,
It's to
because you
help
don't
us.
like the network? No, I'm getting info out and I'm sharing it with the vets, with their family members, their employees, friends, family, neighbors, whatever. It's going out. Okay. So I've had a couple of interviews with vets, and I'd like to have, I'll contact some of yours and bring them on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I've also covered the research. I've covered what they need to learn about the VA.gov, what's there. Hey guys, you got to get more involved and dig around in there.
No,
There's
I
a lot
love that.
there.
I love that site. I
Uh,
love it.
so, so anyway, I do that every week. Tape every Wednesday for the program that airs on Sunday evening. Now it was started because Gary met myself and Doug Rokey. Doug Rokey was Vietnam vet and our vet. Uh, a lot of things have been said, probably against me too, but he got a lot. He was speaking out on DU, and I've seen his OERs, I've seen his orders. I know who he was, and I know how he was treated. So I just kind of had to accept that some people were against him or against me, and we just have to keep going. Okay, we have to keep doing what we think is needed, and we try to get feedback from the rest of the vets. If there's something, let us know,
Hey,
type
I'll
thing.
come on.
But Doug died. He got COVID. He was Vietnam and Desert Storm.
Yeah, I saw
Okay,
that.
he got COVID and died last year,
Yeah.
right after Christmas, in the hospital a week and a half. And like I said, people, being the nurse, I believe in masking. Okay, you will never get me back down on that. Masking early on was piece of fabric, whatever. Well, we had to get the PPE, personal protective gear, to the frontline people first. And we didn't have the supply amounts that were needed in our country. It was all old stuff. It had deteriorated, fell apart. Okay. So the best we could do with, several layers of fabric, get one that you could get a filter into. Don't use one with a vent. And the studies were being done like they'd never been done before of how effective the masking was. But it does cut down on transmission. And it's important that you mask, use your social distance, pay attention when your COVID positivity rate and your cases are going up in your area of the world. Become a little bit more religious on your practice and use the mask.
Right.
We've got the vaccines. We've got the monoclonal monoclonal antibodies, Regeneron, that are out there. If you can't get it at the VA, go to your state public health, because it's out there. You just got to connect, and I can help you connect, find the sites. Because if you get it and you have 10 days, you got to do it before 10 days, and it's an IV infusion.
Oh yeah,
Now
yeah, I've heard
now
of
the
that.
now the pills are coming out that treat. It's a treatment. They're just now getting approved for those. Okay, there's one that's leading the way. I think it's Pfizer's. Um, and I do recommend the boosters, people. I do. I did my research on the boosters. And what I look at is like on the flu shot. That's one shot. I was vaccine resistant too, guys. I'll admit it. I didn't want any more vaccines after the got four.
Oh,
Okay.
amen.
All of us felt that way. But I knew, hey, it's been years now. Mm, things change. Your body changes. Your body adapts. Okay. So I said, okay. Well, the first thing was the flu vaccine. I said, okay, that was last year. I finally, I looked up flu, and now I'll put out a list. If they have squalene MF59 oil and water as an adjuvant, I'm going to tell you these are the flu vaccines that have that. Don't get those. Get these other ones. And I give you the brand name. I give you the link to the FDA and the CDC, where you can actually look at the manufacturer's information of what's in their vaccine. Okay, it's out there. Okay, so I put that out this year, and I said, okay, here's the safe ones. These are the ones. No. I did the research. I put the links up. If you want to double check, fine. I did my research on the vaccines. Okay, I wasn't too turned on with Johnson & Johnson. I avoided it. I favored, as I went through it before we even got them out, where we could get them, the first level ICU nurses and all, and the first level responders were getting it first. The elderly and the nursing homes
Right.
people were dying left and right, got it. So I really dug into it, and on the get-go, I liked Moderna. I liked them. I found out about their research, how far back it went, and it was not developed in a hurry. Neither of these shots were developed in a hurry, people. At least a lot of that went on during Ebola. But then there was not the money to fund their research. It
Right,
was
right.
starting then, but they hadn't got the money. So there was these two teams out there with the knowledge of what to do. But they were having to take jobs that wasn't what they were loving to do to help society and humanity. So they were taking all kinds of other jobs because they couldn't get funding. These are the leaders that are going to have Pulitzer Prize, um, that was there. It wasn't new. It wasn't a year old. It's been several years, maybe a
Right.
decade, going back to Ebola. Okay, I
Exactly.
heard about it in Ebola. And Zika that went down to the South America areas and affected little kids more so. That was a mosquito-borne thing. So the research was out there. So I kind of preferred the Moderna when I read it. Well, that's not what we could get in our area that came out first. It was a Pfizer.
Pfizer, yeah.
I'm going, okay, I'm older. My husband's older. I'm a Desert Storm vet.
Well, here you didn't get a
He's
choice.
military. And he also has had open heart surgery, triple bypass, and has his own health factors. Grew up, military brat, all these bases. And so I said, well, it matters. We have to get what we can get.
Right.
So I
Right.
had him on every daggum list out there. And I had my list because I was able to use CU, Colorado University. We had used different hospitals, so we had their sites. So we got our shots about the same time, and we started with the Pfizer because that's what came. That's what
Right.
was out here.
Right.
You couldn't have your choice. So the Pfizer shots, we both got both rounds, different places we went to get them. Then the boosters came. He got his booster before me, and he was going to stick with Pfizer. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to mix and match. I'm going to get my Moderna finally." And I even checked with our own researchers. I took a little tally. Who's in favor of this? I'm switching. Galum, Dr. Klimas,
Right.
Dr. Sullivan. I didn't get an answer from Dr.
So,
Bronny, but I was kind of, these are people I trust now. So I was putting the message out to them of thinking about mixing massing. I started with Pfizer, but I wanted Moderna, you know.
right. And that's why I
So
tell everybody, just check with your providers. See what your
yeah,
providers say. They'll tell you what to do, when to do it, and everything else. Right
I
now,
mean the
mine told,
VA
Mhm.
Denver has all of it now. They
Yeah.
have all three.
Oh, that's good.
So
That's really good.
yeah,
But
and they were doing the flu and
yeah.
boo for Halloween. They do the flu and the on
Oh,
the
wow.
COVID, and I was bugging them of which flu vaccine are you giving? If you're giving the one that I don't want to take, I'm not going to
Right,
you.
right, exactly. Well,
So
Denise,
anyway, that rounds up everything that I can think of that I had written down between your interview with our valuable other Navy veteran today that I've met in the past.
well, yes, and thank you so much. I do have to take a call. This lady's been
Yeah,
waiting for me to call a
we've
VA
been on
call.
more than 15
Yeah,
minutes.
that's right, girl. But I want to thank everybody for coming on and listening to the program. And Denise, thank you for coming on. And you know you're welcomed anytime. Y'all, please go to my website at goal4sideeffects.wordpress.com or email me at kevinsimon@goal4sideeffects.com. And please help support this podcast and the veterans by clicking on the link below. Thank you for your support.